You are about to become someone different, not slightly different, not marginally improved, completely, fundamentally, irreversibly different in the way you think about, feel about, and move with money. By the time this ends, you will understand something that most people never figure out in an entire lifetime. You will see money the way a chess grandmaster sees a board, not just the pieces in front of you, but the entire game, every possible move, every hidden trap, every path to winning. You will feel the shift happen inside you as you listen, and you will never be able to go back to the way you thought before. This is not a motivational speech. This is not a collection of tips and tricks. This is the complete picture. The entire map of money, laid out in a single sitting, explained in a way that actually makes sense, because you deserve to understand the full truth, not just fragments of it. Most people spend their whole lives picking up one piece of the money puzzle here, another piece there, never quite assembling the full image, never quite seeing how everything connects. That ends right now. Let us begin. The very first thing you must understand about money is that it is not what you think it is. From the time you are a child, you are taught that money is something you earn by working. You go somewhere, you do something. Someone hands you money in exchange. That is the transaction. That is the relationship. Work happens, money appears. That model is not wrong, but it is dangerously incomplete. And the incompleteness of it is exactly why most people stay stuck. Here is the fuller picture. Money is energy, not in a vague, spiritual sense, in a very literal, mechanical sense. Money is stored human energy. When you earn money, you are converting your time and mental and physical effort into a stored form that can be used later. When you spend money, you are releasing that stored energy. When you save it, you are holding it. When you invest it, you are putting it to work to generate more stored energy without requiring more of your direct effort. Once you see money this way, everything about it becomes clearer. The reason some people have very little money is not that they are lazy or stupid or unlucky. The reason is that the way they exchange their energy is extremely inefficient. They are converting massive amounts of their time and effort into very small amounts of stored energy. And then they are releasing that stored energy as fast as it arrives, leaving nothing to grow, nothing to multiply, nothing to build with. The wealthy people you admire, the ones who seem to have money flowing toward them effortlessly, they have simply figured out how to make the exchange more efficient. They have built systems where stored energy multiplies automatically, where other people's time and effort gets converted into their stored energy, where money generates more money without requiring more direct personal effort. This is not a moral judgment. It is simply a description of mechanics. And once you understand the mechanics, you can begin to use them. There are essentially four ways human beings relate to money in their lives. The first is spending. You receive money and you exchange it for goods, services, or experiences. The money is gone. What you received in return may have value, but the money itself has left your hands and does not return. The second is saving. You receive money and you hold it. You do not spend it immediately. You keep it available. This is better than pure spending because you have resources available when you need them. But money that is only saved does not grow. It sits still. And in a world where prices generally rise over time, money that sits still is actually slowly shrinking in real value. What 100 units of money could buy you 10 years ago is not what it buys you today. The third is investing. You take money and you deploy it into something that is designed to generate more money. You are putting your stored energy to work. This is where the game fundamentally changes, because now you are not trading time for money. You are trading money for the potential of more money. And done correctly, this compounds. It builds on itself. The growth generates more growth. The returns generate more returns. Over long periods of time, this is how significant wealth is built. The fourth is creating. You use money, or sometimes very little money at all, to build something that generates ongoing value. A business, a product, a system, something that other people find valuable enough to pay for repeatedly. This is the most powerful relationship with money because it does not require you to have large amounts of money to begin, and the ceiling on what it can generate is theoretically unlimited. Most people spend their entire lives in the first category. They earn, they spend, they earn, they spend. The wheel spins, the cycle repeats, the financial position barely changes decade after decade. A smaller number of people discover saving. They feel more secure. They have a cushion, but their wealth does not meaningfully grow. A smaller number still discover investing. Their wealth begins to build. The curve of their financial life begins to bend upward. And the smallest group of all discovers creating. They build things. They solve problems for others. They scale their solutions. And their financial lives accelerate in ways that feel almost unreal to those watching from the outside. The question is not which category you are destined for. The question is which category you choose. And you can choose differently than you have been choosing. Starting right now. Let us talk about something that very few financial conversations ever address honestly. The psychology of money. Because here is the truth. You could give two people identical amounts of money, identical resources, identical opportunities, and within 5 years, one of them would have dramatically more wealth than they started with, and one of them would have dramatically less. The difference is not luck. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is psychology. Your relationship with money was built long before you had any money of your own. It was built in childhood, watching how the adults around you handled financial decisions. It was built in the stories you heard, both spoken and unspoken, about what money meant, about who deserved it, about what it did to people who had too much or too little of it. And those early experiences, those early stories, they became beliefs. Deep, automatic, unconscious beliefs that run in the background of your mind, like software code, shaping every financial decision you make, often in ways you are completely unaware of. Some of the most common of these beliefs go something like this. Money is the root of all evil. If you grew up hearing this, you absorbed a message that having money is somehow morally dangerous, that rich people are not to be trusted, that pursuing wealth makes you a bad person. And your unconscious mind, which always works to protect you from what it perceives as threats, will subtly but consistently sabotage your attempts to accumulate wealth. It will cause you to spend windfalls quickly, to undercharge for your services, to avoid opportunities that might make you too much money, all in the name of keeping you safe from becoming the thing you were taught to fear. Money does not grow on trees. If you heard this, you absorbed a message that money is scarce, hard to come by, something you have to struggle for. And your financial life will tend to reflect that belief. Struggle will feel normal. Abundance will feel suspicious or temporary. We cannot afford that. If this was a phrase you heard often, you absorbed an identity. The identity of someone who cannot afford things. And identities are incredibly powerful. We unconsciously make decisions that are consistent with our identities. So if part of your identity is that you are someone who cannot afford things, you will continue, unconsciously, to find yourself in that position, even as your circumstances change. Rich people are just lucky. This belief removes your personal agency from the equation. If wealth is purely about luck, then your choices do not matter. Your decisions do not matter. Your effort does not matter. And when your choices and decisions and effort do not feel like they matter, you stop making careful ones. These beliefs are not your fault. You received them before you had the critical thinking tools to examine them. But they are your responsibility. Because now you're old enough, aware enough, to look at them directly and ask, is this actually true? Or is this just a story I have been carrying? The single, most financially transformative thing many people can do is not to find a better investment. It is to examine their money beliefs, identify the ones that are limiting them, and deliberately replace those beliefs with ones that serve them better. How do you replace a belief? First, you have to surface it. Pay attention to the automatic thoughts that arise when money topics come up. Notice what you feel when you think about having a lot of money. Notice what you feel when you think about asking for more pay, or raising your prices, or investing a large sum. The feelings are breadcrumbs leading to the beliefs underneath. Second, you question it. When you find a belief, ask, where did this come from? Is there actual evidence for this? Is this universally true, or just sometimes true, or maybe not true at all? Third, you replace it with something more accurate, not with empty affirmations, but with genuinely true statements that serve you better. Not just, I am wealthy, if you are not, but wealth is built by people in all kinds of circumstances, and my decisions matter in building it. Fourth, you build evidence. You start making small decisions that are consistent with the new belief. And those decisions generate results. And those results become evidence that the new belief is true. And that evidence makes the new belief stronger. And the new belief drives better decisions. And the cycle reinforces itself. This is how the inner game of money works. And mastering the inner game is prerequisite to winning the outer game. Now let us talk about income. Because without income, nothing else works. Income is the raw material of financial life. It is the flow of money coming into your possession. Everything else you do, saving, investing, creating, giving, it all starts with income. There are two fundamentally different types of income, and understanding the difference between them is absolutely critical. The first type is active income. This is money you receive in direct exchange for your time and effort. A salary, wages, freelance fees paid per project, consulting fees paid per hour. Every time you stop showing up, stop doing the work, the income stops. Your time is directly tied to your money. One is always exchanging for the other. The second type is passive income. This is money that flows to you whether or not you are actively working in the moment. Rental income from property, dividends from investments, royalties from creative work, revenue from a business that runs without your constant presence, interest from loans or bonds. The money arrives while you sleep, while you are on vacation, while you are spending time with people you love. The goal of financial life, for most people who think carefully about it, is to build enough passive income to cover their expenses. When that happens, work becomes optional. You can choose to keep working because you enjoy it, because you find it meaningful, because you want to build more. But you are not forced to. The pressure is gone. The treadmill stops. You are free. This concept is sometimes called financial independence, and it is not a fantasy reserved for the extraordinarily lucky or the extraordinarily talented. It is a mathematical reality that anyone can reach by following a clear enough path, consistently enough, over a long enough period of time. But let us be clear about something. Building passive income almost always requires active effort first. The landlord, who collects rent passively first, had to actively work to earn the money to buy the property. The investor who collects dividends passively first had to actively save and invest. The creator who collects royalties passively first had to actively create the work. Passive income is not effort-free. It is front-loaded effort that creates ongoing returns. Now, within active income, there is also a critical distinction that most people never examine. Some forms of active income have a ceiling, a fixed hourly rate, a fixed salary. There is a limit to how much more time you can put in, and therefore a limit to how much money this type of income can generate. These are sometimes called linear income streams because the relationship between input and output is a straight line. Other forms of active income have no ceiling or a very high ceiling. Sales, where a great salesperson can earn multiples of what an average one earns. Business ownership, where your effort can be leveraged through systems and other people. Creative work, where one great piece can be consumed by millions. These are sometimes called leveraged income streams because the relationship between input and output is not linear. A small increase in input can generate a very large increase in output. Most employees are in linear income situations. Most entrepreneurs are in leveraged income situations. This is one of the primary reasons why wealth concentrates heavily among business owners. If you are in a linear income situation and you want to expand your financial life, you have a few options. You can improve your skills and market value, making each hour of your time worth more money. This is the most direct path and is available to nearly everyone. A professional who is 5 times more skilled does not necessarily earn 5 times more, but they do tend to earn significantly more, and they open doors to higher level opportunities. You can increase the number of hours you work. This has obvious limits and comes with costs to health and well-being, but in the short term, it can increase income. You can add additional income streams alongside your primary employment. Side work, freelance projects, a small business on the side. This is how many people make the transition from employee to entrepreneur. You can seek employment in industries or roles that offer higher leverage, such as sales, finance, or technology, where exceptional performance is compensated at much higher multiples. Or you can make the shift to building your own thing entirely, which is the most challenging path, but also the one with the highest potential ceiling. Whichever path fits your circumstances and your goals, the key insight is this. Your income is not fixed. It is not a fate assigned to you by the universe. It is a result of your skills, your positioning, your choices, and your effort. And all of those things are changeable. Let us now address something that acts as the foundation of all financial building: the gap between income and expenses. This gap is called the margin, or sometimes the surplus. It is the single most important number in your financial life. Because this gap, this surplus, is the raw material from which all wealth is eventually built. If you earn 10,000 units of money per month and spend 10,000 units of money per month, your margin is zero. You can earn that amount for 50 years and end up with essentially nothing to show for it. No investments, no assets, no financial security, just the memories of what you spent. If you earn 10,000 units of money per month and spend 7,000 units of money per month, your margin is 3,000. That 3,000, deployed wisely month after month, year after year, builds. It compounds. It accumulates. It eventually becomes something significant. The size of your margin can be increased in two ways. You can increase your income, bringing more in. You can decrease your expenses, letting less out. And the fastest way to increase your margin is to do both at the same time. There is a debate in personal finance about which of these deserves more focus. Some say expenses are the key because they are more directly in your control. You can cut spending tonight. Raising income takes time and effort and skill. Others say income is the key because there is no limit to how much you can earn, but there is a floor to how little you can spend, and obsessing about cutting expenses can become psychologically draining. The answer, practically, is both, but with a hierarchy. In the early stages of financial building, reducing expenses tends to have the fastest and most dramatic impact, not because cutting expenses is more important in the long run, but because it immediately increases the margin without requiring any new skills or opportunities. You redirect money that was leaving your hands toward building your future instead. But expense reduction has diminishing returns. You can only cut so much before you are cutting into quality of life in ways that are unsustainable. The person who is absolutely miserable from extreme frugality eventually snaps and spends dramatically, undoing months of careful saving. So expense reduction is a tool, not a religion. You use it strategically and proportionally, not obsessively. And simultaneously, you work on income growth. Because the person who earns twice as much with the same lifestyle has a margin that is twice as large, even without cutting a single expense. Income growth is how financial acceleration happens. Now, how do you actually manage expenses? How do you make sure money is flowing to the right places? The answer is intentionality, not deprivation. Intentionality. The key question to ask about every expense is, does this align with what I actually value? And does it serve my larger financial goals? Some expenses are deeply worth it. They enrich your life in ways that genuinely matter to you. They support your health, your relationships, your growth, your work. These expenses deserve to be protected, even expanded. Other expenses are habits that were never consciously chosen. They are automatic. Subscriptions you signed up for and forgot about. Spending patterns that were built in a different season of your life and never updated. Purchases driven by impulse, boredom, or social pressure rather than genuine desire. These expenses deserve to be questioned, renegotiated, reduced, or eliminated. The powerful practice is to go through your actual spending, not your estimated spending, but your actual spending, and look at every single outflow. Not to judge yourself, not to feel guilty about the past, but simply to look with clear eyes and ask, if I were consciously designing my financial life from scratch, would I choose this? You will find expenses that you enthusiastically say yes to. You will also find expenses that give you a moment of pause. Those are the ones to examine. And a word about the big expenses, because they matter more than people realize. Small daily expenses get a lot of attention in financial conversations. The coffee, the lunch out. And while those do add up, the truly massive levers of financial life are the big ones. Where you live, what kind of home you occupy, what kind of vehicle you drive. These three expenses alone account for the majority of most people's spending. And the choices you make about them have enormous long-term consequences. Someone who chooses to live in a more modest home than their income would allow, who drives a practical vehicle rather than an impressive one, who keeps housing and transportation costs proportionally low, they free up enormous amounts of margin. Margin that can compound into significant wealth over decades. Someone who stretches to the maximum of what they can afford on housing, who finances a vehicle that makes them feel successful, who optimizes their spending for appearance and immediate comfort rather than long-term freedom. They are making a trade. They are trading future financial security for present consumption. And that trade is perfectly valid if it is made consciously and deliberately. But most people make it unconsciously, by default, because that is what everyone around them seems to be doing. Live deliberately. Spend deliberately. The choices you make about where your money goes are among the most consequential choices of your life. Now we arrive at the part that most people find the most mysterious and the most exciting when they finally understand it. Building wealth through investing. Investing is putting money to work. It is taking your stored energy and deploying it in a way that is designed to generate more stored energy. And the foundational concept that makes this work, the concept that quite literally changes lives when people truly grasp it, is compounding. Compounding is growth that builds on itself. Returns that generate more returns. Interest that earns interest. Over short periods of time, compounding looks modest. Over long periods of time, it looks like magic. Here is the simplest possible illustration. Suppose you have 100 units of money, and it grows at 10% per year. After 1 year, you have 110. After 2 years, you have 121. Notice that it grew by 11, not 10, because the 10 from the first year also earned returns. After 10 years, you have 259. You started with 100. Now, you have more than 2.5 times that, and you did not add any more money. The original 100 simply kept growing on itself. After 20 years, you have 673, nearly 7 times your original amount, still without adding more. After 30 years, you have 1,744, more than 17 times your original amount. After 40 years, you have 4,546, more than 45 times your original amount. This is why the most important variables in investing are time and consistency. Not picking the perfect stock, not finding the magic investment, not timing the market. Time, the length of period over which compounding works, and consistency, the habit of continuing to invest even when it is not exciting. The person who starts investing at 20 with modest amounts will almost certainly end up wealthier than someone who waits until 40 and invests larger amounts, even if the late starter invests dramatically more per month. Because time is doing work that money alone cannot do. This is simultaneously the most liberating and the most sobering insight about wealth building. Liberating because it means you do not need to be extraordinary. You do not need to pick winning stocks or time markets perfectly. You just need to start and keep going. Sobering because it means delay is costly. Every year you wait is a year of compounding you cannot get back. Now let us talk about the vehicles of investing, the actual mechanisms through which you put money to work. The most accessible for most people, and the one that financial research consistently supports as the most reliable over long time horizons, is index fund investing. An index fund is a type of investment that holds a collection of many different companies' shares in proportion to their size. When you own an index fund, you own a tiny piece of hundreds or thousands of companies at once. This spread is called diversification, and it protects you from the failure of any single company. One company in the index might go bankrupt, but the others continue. The overall collection keeps growing. The beauty of index funds is their simplicity. You do not need to analyze individual companies. You do not need to follow financial news obsessively. You do not need special knowledge or connections. You buy into the index, you hold it through market ups and downs, and over long time horizons, the general growth of the economy carries your investment upward. History is very clear on this. Over long periods of time, broadly diversified index funds have outperformed the majority of professional fund managers, the people whose job is to pick winning investments. This is not because index fund investors are smarter. It is because they have lower costs, they do not make emotional trading decisions, and they capture the full return of the market rather than trying to beat it. The concept of cost is important here. Every investment comes with costs: management fees, transaction costs, taxes triggered by frequent trading. These costs directly reduce your returns. And over long time periods, seemingly small differences in costs compound into enormous differences in final wealth. An investment with a 1% annual fee does not just cost 1% more than a 0.1% fee. Over decades, it costs a staggering amount more, because all that extra cost is money that cannot compound for you. This is one reason why low-cost index funds from reputable providers are among the most practical tools available to ordinary investors. They give you market returns minus very small costs. And market returns, compounded over decades, are genuinely life-changing. Beyond index funds, there are other investment vehicles worth understanding: individual stocks. These are shares of ownership in specific companies. When a company does well, its stock typically rises in value. When it struggles, the stock falls. Individual stock picking can produce extraordinary returns if you select the right companies. It can also produce devastating losses. Most individual investors who try to pick stocks underperform simple index funds over time, not because they are foolish, but because the market is incredibly competitive and the information advantages that allowed individual investors to find hidden gems decades ago have largely been eroded by sophisticated institutional investors. Bonds. These are essentially loans you make to governments or corporations. You lend them money, they promise to pay you back with interest over a defined period. Bonds are generally less volatile than stocks. They tend to rise when stocks fall and fall when stocks rise. They are a stabilizing element in a portfolio. As people get closer to needing their invested money, they typically hold more bonds and fewer stocks, trading some potential growth for more stability. Real estate. Owning property that you rent to others can generate both ongoing rental income and long-term price appreciation. Real estate investing is more complex and requires more direct involvement than buying an index fund, but it has created enormous wealth for people who approach it carefully. The leverage available in real estate, the ability to control a large asset with a relatively small initial investment, can amplify returns significantly, though it also amplifies risk. Business ownership. When you own a business, especially one that can run with some independence from your constant presence, you have an asset that can generate ongoing income while also potentially growing in value. A business that earns profit consistently and has systems in place to continue doing so is one of the most powerful wealth-building vehicles that exists. Alternative investments, commodities, collectibles, private loans, startup investing. These can have a role in a sophisticated portfolio, but come with higher complexity, higher risk, and often lower liquidity, meaning you cannot quickly convert them to cash when you need to. They are generally not where someone starting their investment journey should focus. The simple starting point for most people is this: build a surplus. Invest that surplus consistently in diversified, low-cost index funds. Do it automatically, so it happens without requiring willpower every month. Protect it from short-term emotional decisions by remembering that volatility is normal and temporary, while the long-term trend is upward. And let time do its work. That single approach, followed faithfully, has made ordinary earners into people of significant wealth over the course of their working lives. It is not complicated, but it requires patience. And patience, in a world designed to extract your money in the present moment, is genuinely difficult. Let us talk about debt, because no conversation about money is complete without confronting this subject honestly. Debt is future money brought into the present. You borrow from tomorrow to spend today. And like most tools, it is neither inherently good nor inherently bad. It is entirely about how it is used. There is debt that builds. When you borrow to acquire an asset that grows in value or generates income, you are using debt as a lever to build something. A mortgage to purchase property that appreciates over time and can generate rental income. A business loan to fund operations that generate profit far exceeding the cost of borrowing. A student loan for education that meaningfully increases your earning capacity. These uses of debt can be genuinely wealth-building, provided the math works out in your favor. And then there is debt that destroys. Consumer debt. High-interest borrowing used to purchase things that lose value, or that are consumed entirely, or that were purchased simply because you wanted them before you had the money to afford them. Credit card balances that carry interest rates that are genuinely predatory. Personal loans for vacations or luxuries. Financing for depreciating assets beyond what is practical or necessary. This type of debt is one of the most effective wealth destruction mechanisms that exists. And it works because of compounding, the same force that builds wealth when working in your favor, working against you with brutal efficiency when you carry high-interest debt. If you are paying 20% interest on a credit card balance, you are experiencing compounding in reverse. Your balance grows automatically. Time, which should be your ally, becomes your enemy. Every month you carry the balance, more interest accrues. Interest that itself starts accruing interest. The balance grows without you doing anything. And you have to earn money, pay taxes on it, and then use what remains to chip away at a balance that is actively working to grow faster than you can chip. This is why eliminating high-interest consumer debt is almost always the highest return financial move available to someone who carries it. A guaranteed return equal to the interest rate you are paying is available to you simply by paying down the debt. There is almost no investment in the world that reliably returns 20% per year. But eliminating a 20% debt does exactly that. The emotional component of debt also deserves attention. Carrying significant debt is a source of profound psychological stress for most people. The constant low-level anxiety, the feeling of being trapped, the sense that you are always behind. This stress has real costs, not just emotionally, but financially, because people under financial stress make worse financial decisions. They are more likely to spend impulsively to temporarily feel better. They are more likely to avoid looking at their finances because it feels too overwhelming. They are less likely to think clearly about long-term opportunities. Getting out of debt, especially high-interest consumer debt, is therefore not just a financial act. It is a psychological liberation that makes better financial thinking possible. There are two popular approaches to paying down multiple debts. The first is called the avalanche method. You list all your debts in order of interest rate, from highest to lowest. You pay minimums on everything, and you put every extra dollar you can find toward the highest interest debt first. Once that is paid off, you roll that payment into the next highest interest debt, and so on. This is mathematically optimal. It minimizes the total interest you pay over the payoff period. The second is called the snowball method. You list your debts in order of balance, from smallest to largest. You pay minimums on everything, and you put every extra dollar toward the smallest balance first, regardless of its interest rate. When the smallest debt is paid off, you feel a win. Motivation increases. You roll that payment into the next smallest. The momentum builds. This is not mathematically optimal, but research suggests it often works better psychologically because the wins keep people engaged. The best method is the one you will actually follow through on. Some people are motivated by math and will stick to the avalanche. Others need the emotional wins of the snowball to stay engaged. Know yourself and choose accordingly. A note on mortgages and long-term debt. Not all debt must be eliminated immediately. A mortgage at a low interest rate, used to purchase a home in a reasonable market at a price you can genuinely afford, can coexist with a healthy financial life. The question is always the math. Is the interest rate low enough, and is the asset likely to grow enough that carrying this debt makes sense in context of your overall financial picture? Sometimes it does. Sometimes paying down the mortgage aggressively makes more sense. This depends on your interest rate, your other investment opportunities, your personal risk tolerance, and your psychological relationship with debt. What is never defensible, financially, is carrying high-interest consumer debt while not addressing it aggressively. If you have high-interest debt, everything else takes a back seat to dealing with it. No amount of investment returns will overcome the drag of paying 20% interest on a significant balance. Now, let us discuss something that protects everything you build. Financial risk management. Building wealth is not just about accumulating. It is also about protecting what you accumulate. And financial risk is real, diverse, and capable of undoing years of careful building in a very short time if you are not prepared for it. The first layer of protection is an emergency fund. This is money you set aside and do not touch except for genuine emergencies. Job loss, major medical expense, essential home repair, unexpected crisis. The purpose of this money is to prevent a crisis from becoming a catastrophe. Without it, an unexpected expense forces you to either go into high-interest debt or liquidate investments, often at the worst possible time. The conventional wisdom is to have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved in an accessible account. Some people prefer more, especially those with variable income, self-employment, or specialized careers where finding new work takes longer. The exact amount matters less than simply having one, and having it separate from your regular spending money in a place where you do not accidentally spend it on non-emergencies. The second layer of protection is insurance. Insurance is the mechanism by which you transfer catastrophic financial risk to a third party in exchange for a known, manageable cost. It is not an investment. It does not generate returns. Its purpose is purely protective. Health coverage protects you from the potentially enormous cost of medical events. The cost of serious illness or injury without coverage can be financially devastating in ways that take decades to recover from. Income protection, sometimes called disability insurance, protects you if you become unable to work due to illness or injury. Your ability to earn income is almost certainly your most valuable financial asset while you are in your working years. Protecting it makes sense. Life coverage protects those who depend on your income if you die prematurely. If people depend on you financially, having coverage is an act of love and responsibility. Property coverage protects the physical assets you own, your home, your vehicle, from damage, theft, or liability. The key principle with insurance is to insure against risks you could not afford to absorb yourself, the large, catastrophic risks, and to avoid over-insuring against risks you can afford to handle, paying premium costs for protection you do not need. Raise your deductibles where you can afford to, lowering your premiums, and always compare what you are paying against what you are getting. The third layer of protection is legal structure. This becomes more relevant as you accumulate assets. Holding certain assets in appropriate legal structures can protect them from various claims and liabilities. This is an area where professional legal guidance is genuinely valuable because the right structure depends on your specific situation, your jurisdiction, and the nature of what you own. The fourth layer is diversification of your wealth. Not holding all your financial eggs in one basket. Not having all your wealth in a single asset, a single company, a single currency, a single country. Spreading across different types of assets means that a catastrophe in one area does not wipe out everything. This is basic, but essential risk management. And the fifth layer, which most people underestimate, is your own continuous education and awareness. Financial frauds and scams are sophisticated and prey on everyone, not just the naive. Investment schemes that promise extraordinary returns almost always end in loss. Opportunities that seem too good to be true almost always are. The most expensive financial mistakes most people make are not in legitimate markets. They are in chasing the extraordinary opportunity that turned out to be a lie. Staying educated, questioning exceptional claims, working with reputable professionals, and maintaining a healthy skepticism about anything promising unusually high returns without proportional risk is among the best financial protection you have. Now, let us turn to the subject of building multiple income streams. Because relying on a single source of income, no matter how reliable it seems, carries risk that is often underappreciated. What happens to someone's financial life if their single income stream disappears? Job loss, business failure, industry disruption, health crisis. The answer is usually immediate crisis, because the entire financial structure was built on one pillar. When that pillar shakes, everything shakes. Building multiple income streams is therefore not just about growing wealth faster, it is also about resilience, about not having a single point of failure in your financial life. The practical approach to building multiple streams starts with your primary income. You optimize that first. You get the best possible return from your main work. You grow your skills, your value, your compensation. This is the foundation everything else is built on. Then you add, deliberately, with a clear head about the time and energy required. The most common first additions are relatively passive investments. Money saved and invested in index funds or other assets begins generating returns over time without requiring constant attention. This is a second income stream, even if modest at first. Then, perhaps a side project, a skill you have that others will pay for, a service you can offer, a product you can create, a piece of content, a course, a guide, a piece of software, something that can be sold more than once without requiring equal effort each time. Over time, these streams grow and multiply. What starts as one income becomes two, then three, then more. And the beauty is that when streams are diverse enough, they are not all affected by the same things. An economic downturn that reduces your employment income might not affect your rental income. A disruption in one industry does not affect another. Losses in one investment might be offset by gains in another. The goal many financially thoughtful people set for themselves is to eventually have enough streams that no single stream is critical to their survival, that any one of them could stop flowing without creating a crisis. That is genuine financial resilience. Building to that point takes time. It is not done overnight, but it is done, stream by stream, year by year, with intentionality and patience. Let us now address the relationship between money and time, because understanding this relationship is what separates people who feel financially free from those who do not, regardless of how much money they have. Time is the resource you are always trading. Every hour you spend doing something, you are not spending doing everything else. Time is finite and non-renewable. Once an hour passes, it is gone permanently. Money, by contrast, can be regenerated. Lost money can be regained. Lost time cannot. This is why financially sophisticated people think very carefully about what their time is worth, not in a cold, mercenary sense, but in a genuine resource allocation sense. When you do a task yourself, you are spending time. That time has a value. It is the value of what you could have done with those hours instead. If you earn a certain amount per hour in your work, then doing a task that you could hire out for less than that is financially suboptimal. Your time is better spent on your highest value activities, and the lower value task is better delegated. This sounds simple, but has profound implications. The person who insists on doing everything themselves, even things they could affordably delegate, is not being smart about their resources. They are spending their most valuable and least renewable resource to do things that others could do for less. As income and wealth grow, the priority of protecting and intelligently using time increases proportionally. This is why very successful people have teams, assistants, systems. Not because they are lazy or privileged, though some may be, but because they have done the math and understood that their time is their most limited resource and must be protected fiercely. This also connects to the concept of delegation and systems in business. A business that requires its owner to be personally involved in every decision and every task is not really an asset. It is a job. A demanding, stressful, time-consuming job where you happen to be the boss. The business that operates on systems and can run without the owner's constant presence, that is a true asset. It generates income independently of the owner's direct involvement. It is a machine that runs on its own. Building such systems is the work. Not easy work, but the right work. If your goal is financial freedom rather than just financial activity, the relationship between money and time also shows up in lifestyle design. Some people optimize purely for maximizing money. They work the most hours, take the highest paying opportunities, and optimize every decision for financial return. They may accumulate significant wealth, but they often arrive at a point of having money without having time to enjoy it. Others optimize purely for time. They work minimally, keep their needs small, value freedom above accumulation. They may have wonderful experiences, but financial insecurity can undermine the freedom they sought. The most coherent approach for most people is intentional balance, asking, what do I actually want my life to look like? How much financial security do I genuinely need to feel safe? What level of wealth do I want, and by when? What time and life experiences do I want to protect right now, not someday? And then designing a financial strategy that serves those genuine values, not a strategy that pursues money for its own sake or that pursues freedom at the cost of security. Money is a tool. Time is the resource. What you are ultimately building is a life. Keep that in the foreground. We need to talk about taxes, not because they are exciting, but because they are enormously significant, and most people give them far less attention than they deserve. Taxes are the largest single expense in most working people's lives, more than housing, more than food, more than anything else. And yet most people spend almost no effort optimizing their tax situation, while spending enormous effort optimizing much smaller expenses. Tax strategy is not about cheating or avoiding what you legitimately owe. It is about making sure you understand the rules and use them fully in your favor, exactly as they were designed to be used. There are several broad categories of tax-advantaged action worth understanding. Tax-deferred accounts allow you to invest money before paying tax on it, reducing your taxable income today and only paying tax when you withdraw the money later, presumably in retirement when your income may be lower. Every unit of money you invest through these accounts gives you an immediate partial return in the form of reduced taxes today, which itself can be reinvested to compound further. Tax-exempt accounts work differently. You invest money after paying tax on it, but the growth within the account and the withdrawals in retirement are tax-free. Which type is better depends on whether you expect your tax rate to be higher now or later and other personal factors. Business deductions allow people who own businesses to deduct legitimate business expenses from their taxable income. Expenses that are genuinely necessary to conduct business reduce the amount of income you pay tax on. This is one of the significant financial advantages of business ownership and is a major reason why the tax burden of successful business owners is often proportionally lower than their employees, even at similar income levels. Capital gains treatment. In many tax systems, money earned through long-term investment gains is taxed at lower rates than money earned through active work. This is a significant structural advantage of investing. It is another reason why investors tend to build wealth faster than workers with equal incomes. Charitable strategies. In many systems, giving to qualified charitable organizations provides tax benefits, allowing you to support causes you care about while also reducing your tax burden. Estate planning. How your assets are structured and passed on at the end of your life has enormous tax implications. Thoughtful estate planning can preserve significantly more wealth for the people and causes you care about. The point is not to become a tax expert. The point is to recognize that working with qualified tax professionals is one of the highest return investments available to most people. A good tax advisor or accountant, one who is proactive and knowledgeable, often saves many times their fee in tax optimization. Yet most people either do their own taxes without professional guidance or use professionals purely to file returns, not to proactively plan. Tax planning is financial planning. They cannot be meaningfully separated. Let us now address something that most financial conversations skip entirely: the role of giving in a healthy financial life. There is substantial evidence, both from research and from the reported experiences of financially successful people, that generosity is not just a moral virtue, but a component of financial flourishing for the giver. This sounds paradoxical. Giving money away makes you wealthier? How? Part of the explanation is psychological. Generosity tends to reframe your relationship with money. It moves you from a mindset of scarcity, where money is always in danger of running out, to a mindset of abundance, where you have enough to share. And that mindset shift has real effects on financial behavior. People who feel abundant tend to make less desperate, reactive financial decisions. They tend to take better long-term views. They tend to value themselves and their work more highly, which leads to better income outcomes. Part of the explanation is relational. Generosity builds genuine social capital. It creates goodwill, trust, reciprocity, and connection. And in the world of money, relationships are enormously important. The opportunities that come to generous, trustworthy, genuinely helpful people are qualitatively and quantitatively different from those that come to people who are perceived as purely self-interested. Part of the explanation is motivational. When building wealth is connected to a purpose larger than personal consumption, it tends to be more sustainable. The person who saves and invests because they want to build resources that will allow them to give more generously and impact their community more powerfully has a different relationship with the delayed gratification required for wealth building than someone who is simply accumulating for its own sake. None of this means giving irresponsibly before your own financial foundation is established. You cannot give from an empty vessel. Basic financial stability comes first. But once you have surplus, directing some portion of it generously tends to enhance rather than diminish your overall financial and personal well-being. The amount matters less than the habit. Starting small and giving consistently is far better than waiting until you have vast wealth to begin. Because the habit of generosity, the identity of being someone who gives, is built through practice, and that identity, once built, shapes the financial life that surrounds it. We are moving toward the end of this journey together, and we need to address the most powerful thing of all. Your financial future is not predetermined. It does not matter where you started. It does not matter what your parents had or did not have. It does not matter what mistakes you have made in the past. It does not matter what the economy is doing right now, whether it is booming or contracting, whether markets are at highs or lows. None of that determines what is possible for you from this point forward. What determines your financial future is the accumulation of decisions you make going forward. Small decisions, made consistently over long periods of time, compound into enormous outcomes. This is true of good decisions and of poor ones. And it means that shifting the quality of your decisions, even slightly, changes your long-term destination dramatically. Think about the analogy of a ship leaving port. If you shift the ship's heading by just 2 degrees at the start of a long journey, after 1,000 miles, you arrive in an entirely different place. The effort of the initial correction is tiny. The difference in destination is enormous. Your financial decisions right now are your heading. A slightly better decision about spending. A slightly better decision about saving. A slightly better decision about investing. A slightly better decision about how you value your time and skills. These small adjustments, maintained over time, compound in the same way that money compounds, into something very different from where you were headed before. Here is what the next right step looks like for most people who have been listening carefully. If you do not have a clear picture of where your money currently goes, your first step is to get one. Look at your actual income. Look at your actual expenses. Know the numbers. Not to judge yourself, but to see clearly. You cannot navigate without knowing where you are. If you are carrying high-interest consumer debt, your most urgent financial priority is a plan to eliminate it. Not someday. With specific amounts, specific timelines, specific actions. The plan does not have to be perfect. It has to be real, and it has to be started. If you do not have an emergency fund, your second priority is building one. Even a small start is meaningful. Even 1 month of expenses set aside changes the experience of financial crisis when it arrives. If you do not have any investments yet, your third priority is to begin. Even a small amount, even monthly contributions that feel too small to matter. Because they do matter. Because the habit of investing is itself valuable. And because small amounts have time to compound into large ones. If you are not thinking about multiple income streams, begin thinking about it. Not necessarily acting immediately, but asking the question, where could additional income come from? What skills do you have that are valuable to others? What could you build, offer, create, or invest in that could generate a second stream? And throughout all of this, examine your beliefs. The stories you carry about money, about what you deserve, about what is possible for you. Because the beliefs are the foundation. The practical strategies are built on top of them. And a weak belief foundation undermines every practical strategy placed on it. The picture of financial life is now complete. Let us bring it together. Money is stored energy. Your relationship with it starts with your beliefs, which were given to you in childhood but can be examined and changed by you now. Income is the raw material, and it comes in active and passive forms, linear and leveraged forms. The margin between income and expenses is the seed from which wealth grows. Debt is a tool that can build or destroy depending on how it is used. Investing puts your stored energy to work through the power of compounding, which grows slowly, then dramatically over time. Risk management protects what you build through emergency funds, insurance, diversification, and awareness. Multiple income streams create resilience. Time is your most precious resource and must be managed alongside money, not after it. Tax strategy is where enormous value is either captured or leaked, and most people leak far more than necessary. Giving connects wealth building to purpose and relationship and tends to enhance rather than diminish the financial life it comes from. And the future, your specific financial future, is not written. It is being written. With every decision, starting with the ones you make today. You came into this as one person, someone who perhaps felt uncertain about money, someone who perhaps felt that financial success was for other people, for the lucky, for the born into it, for the ones who understood things you did not. You are leaving as someone different, not because of luck, not because of a windfall, but because you now see the whole board. You understand the mechanics, you know the levers, you can see the path, and now the only question is whether you walk it. The answer to that question only you can give.